Welcome again to another episode of On My Block. I'm new and we are here again with the lovely Julianne Ben. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
This time around, we'll be talking about diabetes, as she has four children, as we would have discussed in previous episodes. Two diagnosed with autism at an early age. Her only son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, also at an early age. And then she has her eldest daughter who has no disabilities whatsoever. So let's jump right into it and chat today about diabetes. Welcome back to On My Blog.
Good to be here again.
Wonderful. Now, I want you to talk about how it felt first when you found out you were having a son, because that would be three daughters, right? And a son. So let's talk about that for a bit.
I was excited actually. I was excited actually. It was quite an honor to the point that I remember when giving birth, when the nurse, the midwife asked, you say what it is, they will ask you with each other. Normally they will ask that question. I didn't even wait. I was like, oh, my son. And I was in a lot of pain, so I forget about the pain.
Oh, my.
And, it was such a joy, bringing him into this world, So it was quite exciting. And his oldest sibling was really looking forward to her baby brother.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Now, tell us when you first found out that he had type 1 diabetes.
Actually, going back about roughly about 5 years ago, and he was at primary school, and I remember.
So before you continue, so it was all the way up. So there was nothing happening that alerted you all the way up until primary school.
Nothing that alerted me to
excellent.
that. So in so doing, he was going primary school, and I remember around December in 2015, right? He was going to the bathroom quite a lot, but at that time he was drinking a lot of Marby, and I was telling my friend that he went to the bathroom regularly. She asked me what he's using, so I would share with her what he was using. She said, well, Marby tends to let some people go to the bathroom regularly. And so I stopped, not quite stopped, but the amount of time that I was given, I literally had decreased it. And so then he was good, right? So then it was in the second term, I moved from the mobile and we started giving him a lot of crying water. Once again, crying water is something that you tend to go to the bathroom frequently. And I confronted my same friend, and she said, well, you got to ease off with the crying water, because crying water is flush the kidneys. And I did just that. And I remember, I can actually remember the Thursday. Normally before that, we would get up in the wee hours in the morning, we would take him to the bathroom, right? And I remember the Wednesday, I was saying that we're going to have to, before we go in our beds, and then every 10 seconds, at that time we used to stay up late, and we would take him to the bathroom. So after that, we realized he started having some bed wets. So the Thursday when we would take him to the bathroom, and then like around 2-3 o'clock, and then at 5 o'clock when we get up, the bed is wet. And I was like, but and then it consistently happened from the Thursday, the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday. And his sister, his oldest sister, used to pick him up from primary school, and she came home during the Friday, and she told me that, she said, Mommy, our son went to the bathroom 6 times for the day. And so I got in contact with his teacher at that time. And she said, I wanted to call you from the day in front, but the landline was down. And I told her, okay, I'm going. She said he wanted to go to the bathroom. And all 6 times she let him know. To be quite honest, some teachers there let him go.
It's true.
Right? And she recognized that he was a little sluggish. And I said, okay, I'm going to monitor him. And we decreased the amount that he was drinking. And then he would complain that he wants something to drink. Sorry. But even though things are crossing my mind, what if it's kidney failures, the same type diabetes, And I remember one day he said, Mom, can you bathe me, please? And I was like, okay. Because at that time he was bathing himself. And when I bathed him, not in any bad way, he was slim already. And when I don't know if you are familiar with chicken boars, but his chest literally felt like if I was just rubbing bare bones. I would say something is not right. And so the same thing that was happening the Thursday, I said, okay, you know what, I'm going to take him to the clinic the Monday. And that I did. And I remember that morning when we were at the clinic, he drank off juice and water quickly behind quick sessions. And so when the nurse called his name, I thought he was sleeping. At that time, I didn't know of the diabetes. So then, when they did the blood sugars, it came out on the glucose monitor high. So then it was like, oh my goodness. And she asked if there's anybody in the family that have diabetes. I said, well, from my dad at that time, he was still alive. And he had type 2. And then from my aunt's side, but not at that young age. Not at that tender young age. And it hurt as a mother. As a mother, it would hurt. And it was shocking as well. And so we had to rush him off to the hospital. He had to get admitted to the NICU. And it was quite emotional for me. It was really emotional. And when I had to call his dad and tell him what was happening, he was so shocked. Diabetes, it was so traumatizing. It was really traumatizing. I was like, Lord, it's so hard having to deal with the 2 siblings. How am I going to cope with this? And I remember, because of my relationship with the Lord, I said one day at a time. But it was not an easy.
Wow, you truly are a persistent parent. Every time I hear of your story, I am just encouraged and just blown away with the fact that you manage to deal with every single thing that was thrown at you, and not just deal with it in an ordinary sense. You push past and push through to make sure that your children have close to a normal life, and I think that is so commendable. No, I could only imagine the blow that this would have given hubby. Now I'm back with hubby again. Because this is like a son. There's a certain level of pride that comes over a man when he has a son. And to hear now that his son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, I could only imagine how he felt. And, men don't really talk a lot. They tend to keep a lot of stuff inside. And I'm wondering now, how did he cope with this?
For him, it was a shock, as I said. And it was like the only son. How comes type 1 diabetes? And for him, it was very hard. It was very, very, very hard.
Did you all like sit together and say, okay, we've gotten this far with our two daughters and the autism. Let's see how we can move forward with this diagnosis. Did you sit and kind of planned out a strategy to cope mentally, physically, and emotionally with all of this?
To be quite honest, there were days when we cried. There were days when it's like our whole, what would say, bubble got burst. And we had to change, once again, you had to change diets, you had to change the way you think, what you do, how you do, and for him, he tends to bottle it up, and it's like, I don't understand why the only son we have type 1 diabetes, and as a man, it tends to do something as for him as a man, it can, especially if that's the only meal that you have.
Yeah, I can imagine he probably felt deflated, and probably just wonder or even ask God why. But you mentioned just now about diets. Yeah. Let's talk about the life now of preparing an everyday meal or meal for school, lunch for school, or just a snack. How does that go? And also, let's chat a bit about the blood sugars and how do you test it and how do you keep check of it? Because I assume you have to keep record of it. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, while he was in the hospital, we had nurses that would show us, the doctors also, that he was on those, show us how the boat's supposed to be headed. So we had to do fasting, blood sugars. Then we had to do 2 hours after breakfast, 2 hours after lunch, and then it's before dinner, and then 2 hours after dinner to keep arranging the blood sugars. Once that they don't be too low, because if they go low, it's more dangerous than if they are high, right? And in so doing, he had to get strips, the amount of insulin that he had to take, and so that it will help with his meals. And then we had to follow up with dietitian. And in the dietitian, obviously, you had to get your eyes checked. That's a must. Once you're diabetic, you had to get your eyes checked. And so it came with a lot of responsibilities. It meant that you had to write up everything. The sugars, the diet, if he had any complications, you had to write so and keep that as a record for when he has his appointments.
Wow. So here it is, you're just getting over or learning actually how to manage the autism, and now you're back here again and you're having to prepare and plan and take blood sugars and inject insulin. I just want to just get in a little bit more deeper into that. Like, tell me an everyday, let's start with breakfast. How does that go? Kind of walk me through that process: breakfast, lunch, dinner, all the way till bed, and then early morning.
Well, when it comes to planning his breakfast, yes, he has to do the blood sugars. But then with breakfast, you have to do carb counting.
Okay, so talk to me about that.
So carb counting is like one choice is equal to 15 grams of carbohydrates. And so at that stage, he was only on 45 grams. So I had to make sure that the meals that I give him, I literally had to measure. And so if you're a person that don't like to measure, you have to. Because then if you overtake, it could cause high blood sugars. And you don't want that, right? And so you had to measure everything that you had to use. You have to do. And you don't just do it on your own. The dietitian will go through it with you. Whatever dietitian you place on it, they will show you the schedule. And for me, I had that. And I had an excellent nurse. She's not here in the island now. But they saw me through how to write it up. And from the time that I knew how to write it up, I just flow with it. So breakfast, I had to do the carb contents. Then he will have a snack. And at that.
So before you go on, the breakfast would be, let's give an idea of what is an average breakfast for him.
Yes,
which would be
like oats. You tends to use more things with fiber. That will help keep you full, right? So the more things you use with fiber, natural things, the better for the child, right? So I'm not saying that you can't give them a little leadway because you don't want it to be too strict of a diet, because then the child will sneak, and you don't want that.
Right.
But however, so natural, the more natural you go, the better. Fruits, and obviously, if you're making your drink, you can't use sugar. You have to use, you can use like a little honey, or depends on what it is, and you can use it just so without adding any sweeteners. You can do that. So his snacks, then lunch.
What would be the snack first?
The snack could be like a glucerna, or
this is like a glucerna bar.
It could be a glucerna, the liquid. In the bottle.
Right.
Anything with fiber. It could be the granola bars. It can be oat cookies. Excuse me. It can be, as I say, it could be chocolate. They have chocolate bars that are sugar-free, right? That they can use. And so he knows to like that, right?
And then dinner.
For his dinner, vegetables is key. Even in his lunch, if we do a sandwich or if we do a wrap, I make sure that it has lettuce, even though that he's not a big fan of it. As children are, I tend to do lettuce. I still use a little mayonnaise, not too much, to get him to, because the whole idea is able to get them to
enjoy the meal.
Enjoy the meal. And vegetables with his dinner, less carbs. And when I say less carbs, even if you use vegetables that are carb contents, like the pumpkin, like the squash, right? That can, sweet potato, that can work, right? So he will have his rice, carbs, in terms of like the sweet potatoes, squash, pumpkin, but his favorite vegetable is okras.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I would never have
Loves.
Oh my god.
Wow. He loves to stir fry okra.
Oh, this is amazing.
And
a child
yes,
loving okras.
very odd. No?
Yeah,
So so he like that. Once again, I try to cook healthy meals. I'm not saying that there are times that I do a little macaroni point and there are times that he didn't get any, right? Because they still don't want to be
too rigid, because it might then allow him to, or open the avenue for him to cheat.
Exactly.
And you really don't want that.
Exactly. And even like times where we go out, you can have some chicken and some salad. You can have, if you want a few chicken and chips, you will not get all of the chips. But I still allow him to have that fun,
So let's talk a little bit about you taking him out and he wants to have chicken and chips. And you obviously portion control the amount that he would have. Now, how do you test the blood sugar, and then do you then administer the insulin in any of that process?
If
Or
we are out, no. What I tend to do is that if we are going out, yes, we can test the blood sugar. So for instance, evening late, we're going out for dinner, we test the blood sugar. And what I tend to do, I would walk with the insulin, draw it up, make sure that it's on ice. You have to make sure that it's on, so that it's not hot, right? And so that when we go out, when we get there, well, he does the injecting himself, I don't.
okay.
And then he will have his meal. And, by the time that he done run around, and as a child, they done burn off, so sometimes the blood sugar will not come out high. So that's if we are going out for dinner. If we are out like from morning and we have to eat out at lunch, what I tend to do, instead of giving him something that is heavy in carbs, what I will gravitate for fruit, right? And once I give him that fruit, and you go and you want to have chicken and chips, or you want to have a submarine, and there are times if you want half of a submarine or a whole submarine, I say, well, if you get the whole submarine, you have to use water, because that's the amount of carbs. That is right? So that's how we tend to work it.
Okay, so you've had that, and my question would be now, how did he cope? Because I know as he comes into the understanding that this is the situation he's faced with, he's probably going to look at others and wonder, well, why aren't they using insulin, or why is, how did he cope with?
At first, at primary school level, for a child that like to share, eventually I asked him for certain things he was to give. And so I had to tell him, I know you love to share, but you have to be careful because you don't want that you going low, right? So at one point in time, I would give him like the chocolate granola bars. So children tend to love it. And I spoke to the teacher at the time, and what the teacher actually did was, instead of making it as a discipline something, she make it in a teachable something to let the children understand.
No, that's excellent.
Right? And so now, at this stage, it's more challenging because he's a teenager now. And it's like a third taking the insulin, a third got be sticking, and a third using this and a third using that. Some days, sometimes he doesn't even want to eat. It's like a third of this healthy. Like, even though that there are times that we still allocate a little lineage, it could be very challenging. And for him, I tell him it's okay to feel these things, but, we're going to get through. I don't say you're going to get through it. I say we're going to get through this. And I said the hardest thing we want to do, we don't want to see hospital. We don't want to see the war. So this is what this is how we going to work it. So it's very challenging at this moment.
Does he have a body of friends, probably with the same diagnosis, that he can pull strength from, or that he can be an encouragement to? Because then I'm thinking that exchange could also benefit.
For him, not really. Not really. But one good thing I will say, when in primary school, he has some friends who is going to the same secondary school as him, and the unfortunate thing for him is like, I don't want nobody to know, that I'm diabetic. And I tell you, I understand how you feel, but you still have to be careful, because if at any point in time that something had to happen, God forbid, somebody's still able to have to, even though yes, the teachers
Mhm.
the year ahead and his teachers know,
Mhm.
you still at that point in, if they're not there, you still want that your friends know.
Is it a fear that he would be ostracized? Is it a fear? And if that is the fear, how can we, as the general public, you as the mother, how can we get around that? Because I know, teenagers can be a bit mean and not fully understanding what it's about, right? And it could be a life and death situation. You tend to call names and make up names for him, and that could cause him to have to deal with emotional pain.
I think that more could be done. And when I say, especially if you have a child that is shy, you have to become that mouthpiece for your child,
Right.
right? There's some children who may be bold with it, but yet still feel uncomfortable seeing. And then there's some, well, it is what it is, right? And so I think that if we can get into the schools, the society, the churches, because some people don't understand. Some people, when they hear diabetes, they still think that you can eat and drink, everything. But, the more information that you get about it, and what signs to look for, and you happen to come into a situation where you see a child maybe standing up and just staring, that is one of the symptoms. Or you may hear a child may say, "Are you real hungry?" That is another symptom, another sign of low blood sugars. And then there are some that maybe feel sleepy. And in being sleepy or feeling tired, and when they're feeling tired, they're going to sleep. You think that child may be sleeping, that child may be actually going into a diabetic coma. And so you got to know the different signs. And you may got some that may look like they're drunk. That's another sign of low blood sugar. And so I think the more that the families know, that the church know, schools know, wherever you go know, the better is for our children, because there's some people, unfortunately, even within our school and even within our churches, who does not understand, and they may think that the child just playing around and playing a prank, and maybe with the kids that's not the case.
Okay, so with that said, I have two questions, and that is about the diabetic coma. Now, let's say something like that had occurred at school, and the children, not understanding what it was, probably thought it was a prank and left him there. How should something like that be dealt with? Is it a stage before? Is it something that you can say, okay, there's a sign or a warning before you go in, that you could say, okay, well, I need to give him this or I need to give him that?
Not really, unless the person verbalize it. No. Unless you know the symptoms. No. And while I will say that I had 2 episodes. 2. And I remember that night, for some reason, I went into the bedroom and I was calling him. And he was just looking. But that's the first time I ever experienced it. He was just looking. I was calling him and calling him. And his older sister ran and picked up the phone and called. And his blood sugar was very low. And then within a number of days, even though that he had a full amount of carbs for the bedtime snack, I just felt the need to go and test the blood sugars again. And this time he was not responding. It was literally low. And so we had to call the ambulance. And the good thing for me, at that, in health system, you tend to learn a lot. I did not know that it was a difference between a paramedic and the EMT. And in so doing, the paramedic came, and he was not, even though that they were allocating a glucose in his mouth, he was not still responding. So then they had to inject, put in an IV, and then inject. And from the time that the last of it went in, you just gotta, it's a serious thing when they're sleeping, because when they're sleeping, you don't know, right? And it's a serious thing. It's like if they're on the road or at school and they don't say anything, unless you're aware of the signs, you know what to look for. There's no way that you know. And another thing too is that if you hear they saying that they're hungry, because I remember this is when I was new to it, he was saying, "Mommy, I'm real hungry." I said, "But you know, you can't get anything." What I would do, like if he's hungry, I would give him like if it's a slice of cheese, a protein that is not carb, right? And I would tell him, "But you know, dinner, you're gonna soon get dinner." And he keeps saying, "Mommy, I'm hungry, bro." And for some reason, the Lord said, "Test the blood sugars," and the blood sugar was so low.
Okay, when you say so low, what is a so low?
1.2.
Okay.
It was a 1.2 to the point that he started to see double. And
how quickly did it go from where he would have started at to that 1 point?
Well, that was the evening time when he came home from school, right? So which means that he would have been low
on his way home.
Yes. And after, even though that he would have had his evening snack.
So, you know, some people would say, okay, give that person a brown meat. Does that work? Is that effective?
No. The best thing that is quick and effective is a red fruity.
A red fruity?
Yes. Yes.
And
if you don't have that, Marby. But you will have to make the Marby very, very, very sweet, depending on how low. Or honey.
Wow, this is and you are phenomenal. Now this goes past persistent parent. You are phenomenal. I mean, to already have the diagnosis of your daughters, now you have to track, you have to monitor, and it's not like you can do it and just say, okay, I'll turn my back and I'll just go and do my own thing. It's a consistently going at it. I am totally floored, totally floored that you are just, wow, just amazing. That's all I can say. I really don't have any more that I can say. You are totally a persistent parent. Something that I just wanted to find out about the insulin. Now, is it one particular type of insulin? Is it several types of insulin he has to use? How do you administer it? You said you have to keep it on ice, and you mix it. So what kind of cocktail thing you're doing here?
It depends on the insulin, because there are some insulins you cannot mix. Human A and human R, Novolane N or Novolane R, they're both you could draw in the same syringe. But if a person is on, there's some insulins that you cannot mix, because if you mix them, it can cause problems.
So why are you mixing the N and R together?
Because the two can go together.
And the two, okay, so the N is for and the R is for?
The R is the fast acting one.
Okay.
Right?
So if he's having a low blood sugar issue,
you have to treat the blood sugar first.
Okay.
You have to treat the blood sugar first. And in treating the blood sugar first, then you have to we test it 15 minutes after. And that's by drinking something that is sweet.
Wow. So you're a persistent parent, you are a healthcare provider, a nurse, a pediatric specialist, everything you want. This is like so phenomenal. Oh my goodness. I am, as I said, totally and completely floored by this. Um, Now, again, I'm going to ask you to just encourage our viewers. But before we head there, I I could only imagine how extremely different. I know you're sitting here, you're looking all beautiful and all in smells, but I could only imagine how extremely challenging, especially early stages. I'm assuming now that they're older, you have a little bit of, lead way, a little bit of time. But I could only imagine how difficult that whole process had to be. But I'm glad that out of it all, you can share your testimony. You can share, because I know that there's so many people who need that encouragement. Because for others, it might not necessarily be a diagnosis of any. It might be some other area, a financial burden or something else. But to see that you are making it, and not just half-heartedly, you are fully on top of your game. You are handling the situation, and I really want to say thank you, and I'm sure that you are going to be an inspiration to others. I can't wait for that book, that talk show, standing at the podium and watching you speak about all of these challenges that you've been through and how you overcome them. I think that it is extremely awesome. And also to your children, because your children are phenomenal children, whether or not they have disabilities. They are phenomenal. I believe that they are going to do well in life. As you said, the two that will go overseas and come back and be able to have workshops and do stuff that would encourage others. So I really wanted to thank you for that. And just ask, if before you encourage, if there is anything else you wanted to share about the diabetes, and just hearing you before you speak, just hearing you talk about it. I remember I had an opportunity to work on a project, and this project you had to actually call persons and talk to them about diabetes. And I was totally floored at the amount of Barbadians that do have diabetes, one, two, not taking care of themselves because they have not gather the knowledge or seek to get the knowledge on how to even prepare a meal, how to count the carbs, how to check. And I think if we could get onto that bandwagon like you have been on, I think that we'll be able to eradicate a lot of the non-communicable diseases that we have in the island. So it's a tremendous blessing to have you with us on All My Block, because I'm sure that you will receive some correspondence from persons probably wanting to find out, how do you plan that? How do you count the carbs? How do you measure? How do you test? How do you mix the R, and is it N and R? N and R. Okay, I'm getting somewhere with this. So if you would just encourage our viewers before we sign out.
Well, once again, with type 1 diabetes, it's not a death sentence. The most important part is acknowledging what it is and make the necessary changes. It means that you may have to cut out the weight, how you eat, how you take care of yourself, and how you carry yourself, keep up with your appointments. If you're not sure where children is concerned, you always have the pediatrician there. And if you know of any nurses, 'cause for me personally, I know of nurses. I'm surrounded with quite a few nurses. And one thing that they always used to hammer is like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. And I remember, it gave me an opportunity to let them know, it's only God's grace. I could not do none of this on my own, but it's the grace of God that is seeing me through and helping me to cope and work with my children. So I encourage you parents that have children with, whether it's type 1 diabetes, type 2, whatever disease it may be, hold on to hope. Put your hope in Christ. Thank God for the doctors. And do the best that you can. Get your child involved. Because one thing I do with my son, I give him a level of responsibility, and he takes his own insulin. He doesn't let anybody inject him. He doesn't. That was from primary school. He does his meals, and and I allow him to, even to the point of writing down the numbers, his blood sugars, and writing out his diet, and not to leave it all for him to do, but to take part in it, And yes, the days that they feel frustrated, let them vent.
Right.
That's important. Let them vent, because if you tell them, man, no, let them vent, express how they feel. If they want to cry, there are times as parents you may have to zip your mouth and just give them a hug. There are times that you have to just give them a hug.
Right.
There are times when I was saying, what? You're in this by yourself, You're not in this thing by yourself. God is with you, which is most important, and your parents is with you. Your siblings is with you, and you got other people that looks out for you.
Wonderful.
So, give them that sense of security and hope in a challenging situation, because it's not easy going every morning. You got to be pricking. It's not easy when you have to be taking insulin in the morning and in the evening. It's not easy, but however, you have to encourage them. And if you don't know how to encourage, get some help to help you encourage. Ask the Lord that for those that are in Christ, Lord, help me to be an encouragement to my children. Help me to encourage in the midst of a challenging situation. And for those that are not in Christ, that'd be the best thing. But what? Make sure you have people around you that can encourage you and to help you through with that situation, even though that is challenging. And it helps.
Right.
It helps.
It can only get better. Yes?
Yes.
Wonderful. So that has been another episode of On My Block. We had Mistress Judy Ann Ben in the studio with us from the block of St. Peter. We thank you so much for being with us. So stay tuned again for another episode where we talk about whatever matters to you. Again, we thank you, and we thank our persistent parent. And maybe we could put a little jingle together before we go out. What about that?
I ain't too sure what that was.
Well, thank you so much, and do have a wonderful day.